an equally intense focus on the issues that are having an impact on the lives of all of our fellow citizens, where the Quad is a force, I believe, for good, positive, affirmative action. What's in so many ways important about it is this. First, we start with the proposition that virtually none of the challenges that our people are facing and that people around the world are facing can be effectively dealt with by any one country acting alone, whether it's the United States, whether it's India, whether it's Japan, whether it's Australia. And given that basic premise, it makes sense for us to start by finding like-minded groups of countries with which to tackle these challenges. And the great power of the Quad is you have four like-minded countries, united in their basic values, united in their basic interests, bringing different strengths, different experiences, different comparative weights to tackling these problems. Mm-hmm. And not only tackling them for ourselves, but actually creating a global commons good, particularly for other countries in the Indo-Pacific. And what we've done over the last couple of years, in particular, is translated that into very practical projects, very practical, in a sense, offerings, so that we're creating for other countries in the region a positive choice and a positive partner. We're doing that. Obviously, we did this on vaccines during COVID. We've been doing it on infrastructure for some time. We are now engaged very much in working together to help countries deal with humanitarian situations, disasters. And, of course, we're working on things that are really critical in ways that may not be so obvious to countries throughout the region, which is what's called maritime domain awareness, giving countries the capacity, the tools, to have a full picture of everything that's happening in their maritime space, which is affecting the lives of many of their citizens, for example, illegal fishing. So I think not only are we not distracted, on the contrary, we're more deeply engaged than ever, and the Quad is one of the most critical vehicles for that engagement.
Secretary, our bilateral relationships, India-US bilateral relationships, have taken a step forward with this latest critical and emerging technologies agreement, a lot of excitement, a lot of coverage. Can the Quad elevate itself to collaborate on critical defense technologies? Or is that going to be the preserve for AUKUS and for the old partners? Does Quad have a vision for also working together on building the defense for future?
Well, I'd say two things. First, of course, this is not a military grouping. It's not that kind of alliance. But one of the things that we are doing through the Quad is trying to bring together not only governments, but academia and other experts to look at where we might collaborate together on new technology, on innovation. And whether that has benefits in other areas remains to be seen. But clearly, our four countries in particular are very well placed to increase in a variety of ways our collaboration on emerging technology and on innovation, and that's something that we'll also do through the Quad.
Minister Hayashi, is Quad relevant for Japan's maritime security concerns? How is it important for what's unfolding in East China Sea? Do you think it is a feel-good, talk-shop, consultative group? Or do you think it has the potential to be able to put together something that will be of use to you when things get rough?
Thank you. Thank you. Like Tony said, this Quad is not for security issues, not military issues, but practical cooperation, like everybody said. So, since your question is about maritime security, this is not directly for the security, but through those cooperation and including four of us, and then to the Blue Pacific areas like Pacific Island countries and ASEAN and also South Asia. This understanding and mutual understanding and cooperation, then they will make some combined will to cherish the same value like democracy, freedom, and that will eventually help to have more a security assurance environment for all of us.
So, okay, it's not a security actor. The other important area that Japan is focused on is connectivity, and it is investing in infrastructure across the region. Do you think Quad can have an agenda for connectivity and infrastructure? Do you think that could be an actor and contribute to that?
Yeah, through our bilateral ODAs and also through some international institutions, we've been already in many decades doing some infrastructure and also economic cooperation in these areas. But on the top of that, this Quad is not only bilateral like Japan and some countries, but this is a Quad as a whole. Will be coordinating all those efforts of 4 countries so that we can do much better than just 1 + 1 + 1 is 4. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 is 4, but 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 could be 6, 7, or 8 by coordinating and listening. We have now 8 years to listen to all those needs of the countries and communicate and coordinating in the Quad like we did this morning. We can listen more and we can do it more.
8 years, but you also have 4 tongues, and we have to be watchful there. But let me ask you the final question for this round to you, Minister Hayashi. The China factor. Many of us have a very strong economic relationship. Japan certainly does with China. China disapproves of the Quad, and in some sense you have to navigate that as well. How does Japan do that?
So, like I said, this is not a military, but this is just practical cooperation, and we don't trying to exclude anybody. This is open architecture. So one thing we would like to say is to just abide by the law, international institutions, and as long as even China abide by the law of the international norm and also act under the international institutions standards and rules, then this is not the conflicting issues between China and the Quad.
Let me turn to you, Minister Jaishankar, and perhaps you can enlighten us. Why was Quad in some ways dead on arrival 10 to 15 years ago when the first avatar was being discussed, debated, even considered, to today India hosting the Quad panel discussion at Raisina Dialogue? What changed? Why did it change? And how does this really reflect how you assess the importance of the region and the group in the region?
Well, Samir, I don't think it was dead on arrival. It was dead a few months after arrival, and it's important to understand why, because by some coincidence I happen to be associated with different phases of the Quad. I take the Quad back to Boxing Day 2004 when the Indian Ocean tsunami happened. It so happened at that time I was the country coordinator for our external coordination and response. Then in 2006 when Prime Minister Abe came to India, he before coming had this idea that the Quad could be an effective way of dealing with the challenges. There was actually a Quad meeting, my memory serves me right, in Manila in 2007, and then, as you say, it didn't work out. If you ask me why didn't it work out as opposed to what happened 10 years later, because it was revived 10 years later, 2017, at the level of under secretaries, vice ministers. I was foreign secretary then. 17 it was revived, then 19 it became a foreign minister's level, and when the Biden administration came in 21 it became a summit level. So what's the difference between 17, 19, 21 as opposed to 2007? One, I think there was greater strategic clarity on the part of all the countries concerned. our own inter-se relations changed during this period. If I were to look at India's ties with the US, it became much deeper. With Japan also it grew, and I think the real big change has been in the last decade with Australia. So in a way, Quad is working in 2023, partly, as I said, because we have greater strategic clarity. I also think we have leaderships with a greater sense of purpose, who are less encumbered by baggage. But to me, a big difference is actually our inter-se relationship, which has today become so much more confident and so much deeper. So, in fact, the one point I would differ with Minister Hayashi, actually I hope one day it will be 1111, the 1111.
When you walked in, all of you seemed quite at ease, and there was a bit of a relaxed field vibe to it.
There's always a relaxed feel when we
So, what did you discuss inside the room?
a lot of things, but if my colleagues would indulge me, we actually today captured some of our discussions in the form of a statement. I think that statement would have been put out or will be put out. So if you ask me what were the new things which came out today, we agreed on a counter-terrorism working group. We agreed on cooperating more closely with the Indian Ocean Rim Association. We agreed that there would be we had earlier worked out a HADR initiative. So the standard operating procedures for that, which I think the military people would obviously see as a prerequisite for their cooperation. I think we coordinated on the UN to make sure that the processes of the UN are respected, and the workings of the UN stay true to its spirit. I was personally happy that there was a stronger expression of support from all of us collectively to the reform of the UN, to the fact that there would be intergovernmental negotiations on the reform. I also see that when it comes to sustainable development goals, which all of us are committed to, we believe that they should be pursued comprehensively, not cherry-picked for political convenience. We will be doing a maritime security working group very shortly in Washington, and we discussed, among other things, one of the outcomes we agreed on was that the listings of terrorists, the counter-terrorism side listings should not be politicized. So these were some of the outcomes. So there were a lot of things which I can't tell you. But this is the public side of what we can tell you. So I thought collectively I should be putting it out.
And how do you respond to this common refrain that most politicians seem to indulge in from the Quad countries, that this is not against anyone, we are not a security grouping, we are not a military grouping. Why are we apologetic?
No, I don't think, look, we are not apologetic. I do believe, because I keep reminding people of 2004, because to me, if your origins are in common good, there's an innate virtue in your existence. Okay? So we do stand for something. What I would not like to be defined as is standing against something or somebody, because that diminishes me. That makes it out as though some other people are the center of the world and I'm only there to be for them or against them. I don't think, actually I think I'm the center of the world, but that's a different matter.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to, as is custom here, I'm going to turn to our young fellows. We have 48 young fellows from 33 countries who are spending 2 weeks with us, and typically we go to a couple of them for every session to hear their thoughts, their questions for all of you. So I'll turn to first to Tista and then to Kiritbir. Tista, introduce yourself very briefly.
Good morning, Ministers. My name is Tisa Prakash, and I'm from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute in Canberra. And my question to you is, how do we build a regional consensus in the Indo-Pacific, given the 4 Quad countries sit on the periphery of the Indo-Pacific? How do we then include Southeast Asia? How do we bring the Pacific Islands with us to really sort of create a regional narrative for what is not a security perhaps, but an economic architecture? How do we bring the region along with the 4 Quad countries? Thank you.
And can I just add to that, because all of you have also invoked the term, look, all of you have started speaking like each other, and that worries me. All of you say ASEAN centrality. Okay. You say ASEAN centrality, and we keep thinking, what does that really mean? Does it mean that beautiful flower arrangement in the middle of the room when 4 of you are sitting? What does it really mean? So, sorry, the second question, Kirit Bir. Let me go to the second question and then I'll come to you. Can we take the second question?
Thanks, Samir and panelists. I'm Kirbir Chahal. I work for the British government. Similar question to narrative, but how do you think the Quad can reconcile their strategic interests in and their competing visions for the Indo-Pacific? And given the Quad are already discussing supply chain resilience and economic resilience more broadly, are Quad members likely to increase market access for each other to further strengthen that economic cooperation and truly move in the same direction?
Good. So now I'll turn to the panelists. The first one was to you, ma'am. So over to you, Minister Wong.
Well, I might. I think the nub of the first question goes really to complementarity. I'm trying to not be provoked by the flower arrangement analogy just for the moment, but it goes to complementarity, and I think if we can start perhaps where Jai started, which is think about what we are for, not what we are against. What are we for? I think where we are very like-minded is we have a view about the attributes of the region we inhabit. And that region, people will use different words. Some say open and inclusive. Some might say stable, secure, free of, where sovereignty is respected. But the point is, we do have a view about that. We see the Quad, I would say, as a bit of a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That was for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we conceive it as enabling choices. And I think it enables choices in 2 ways. It enables choices by these countries working for a region with the attributes that enable choices. And it also enables choices by virtue of the practical work that we seek to do together, sometimes through all 4 in the work streams that Jai described, sometimes collaboration, whether it's in the Pacific where Australia and Japan or Australia and India might work together in a particular country. This project is a good one for you to do, this is a project we'll do, this is what we've done, that sort of practical cooperation. So I don't feel the dissonance that I know some commentators feel, and that is underpinning a couple of the questions, as between the different architectures, because as an Australian, the region in which we live demands the engagement at multiple levels in multiple contexts. We are the first dialogue partner of ASEAN, so our commitment to ASEAN centrality is historic and real, but it is also geographic. And we do not see our engagement with our friends and partners up here on the stage as doing anything other than enhancing that.